G'day everyone and welcome to the first week of the finals edition of the Weekend Wrap brought to you by CrowCast. Not only were there some fantastic games played over the weekend, but since we last spoke on the Crows, there's just been a ton going on. So without any further ado whatsoever, why don't we just get straight into it, shall we? G'day everyone and welcome to the Weekend Wrap for the first week of the finals. Thanks to everyone who's joining us on Discord, Facebook and YouTube, and also on Twitch of course. If you want to get amongst us on Discord, don't forget, if you haven't got the Discord app, you can go straight to the AFL CrowCast website, go to the live chat page, follow your nose there, and you don't even have to have Discord installed. You can chat away with everyone else. And speaking of chatting away with anyone else, Macca and Nicky, how you going, guys?
Oh, we're just jogging along, I think.
Jogging along?
Watching other teams playing finals and wishing we were there. But
oh, yeah.
No, and they've been good to watch, actually. It's probably one of the best for a long time, the series so far. But, all's good.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. At least the football games have actually been good. I've actually enjoyed watching them.
That's very true. Matty, Razor, how you going on the chat? I'm sure J-Mac and Vardy and a few others will be joining us in due course. Obviously no game for the Crows this week, but still plenty to talk about, the two of you. Not only some great finals games, but also just a ton of stuff going on at the club. I can't remember us being so active at this stage of the season. Generally, we go a bit dark for a couple of weeks until trade week, but they've been smashing it out.
Well, there's plenty to talk about there, and a lot of positive stuff and a bit of negative stuff, so there's stuff everywhere.
There is stuff everywhere, and there's tons of stuff to talk about. So how about we just quickly talk about the weekend's results, then we can talk all about what's been going on at the club. Some really good games, in my opinion. Thursday night's game was pretty good. Geelong a bit disappointing. They probably kicked themselves out of the game in the end, going down 9-4-58 to 5-12-42. So Port winning by 16 points in the end there. And they look pretty good, Port.
Well,
they did indeed.
Well, they did. After Hawkins had sort of stuffed up very badly. Geelong had an opportunity to put genuine pressure on Port Adelaide, and Hawkins, who has got a horrible finals record in the last 2 years anyhow.
Yeah.
In the qualifying finals, he's had, I think I've got this right, 10 attempts to kick a goal, of which he's kicked 9 points.
Yeah.
0-9. Now, if he'd kicked those early goals against Port Adelaide, and I think I've listened to Matthews on the radio, and he was of the same opinion that Geelong could have created a lot of pressure on Port and maybe had somewhere between a 3 and 5 goal lead at half time. But and to Port's credit, they took advantage of Hawkins' failure to convert. And I thought after half-time they were a pretty slick unit. They had their game operating very, very well, and Geelong were never, ever going to get back into it.
Nick, how'd you see it?
I saw Port kind of doing similar to what we did to Geelong, in that pressure at them, pushing them. They do like to do that out wide and then bring it in, and they really did stop that most of the time. So part of the problem for Geelong as well was they couldn't get their entries into the forward line how they like. Definitely with Hawkins, goal kicking is completely and utterly between the ears, and he does not cope in finals. I think that was as you've stated, Becca, that's kind of showing up that he's a liability because of that, and because they do actually rely on him a lot. But I think I really enjoyed the way Port were moving the ball, the way they were pressuring at it, and Geelong tried to then get physical, and there were a few little spot fires, and they got sucked in and kept giving away free kicks and then getting shitty because they weren't getting because they were getting called on them. So it was kind of funny. I was actually watching it with my parents, and my mother didn't. She didn't want Port to win, and Dad and I were barracking really hard for Port to actually win. So that made it quite an interesting evening.
But I can still come back to Port Adelaide. As for winning a flag, they've still got one weakness, which is they have a shortish backline. Hawkins had that opportunity to exploit it. And I think if Richmond, if their boy comes up and he's available, he's not going to miss those shots for goal like that. So I don't know. They're a good side, Port. Maybe they can do it, but I'm thinking they won't go all the way.
I think it's been an issue with Geelong in that they haven't been able to put scoreboard pressure when they're playing these away finals. They've played a few away finals of late, and they just don't seem to be able to put that early pressure on it. And Hawkins, as you say, Mac, he was the man. They had plenty of opportunities to put some scoreboard pressure on in the first half, and they didn't. And you can't do that in an away final.
No, it's not just the scoreboard pressure, it's also the psychological pressure. That man's really giving us trouble. So all of a sudden you're thinking about that rather than the game. So it has a two-edged sword to it. So, and then, because he failed so badly, it made Port lift. And then, once they got really going, then as Nicky said, they denied Geelong their game once they got on top.
Yep. Look, in the second game, the Brisbane-Richmond game, 10-9-69 Brisbane to Richmond 8-6-54, that was an absolute belter of a game. Absolute belter.
And unfortunately, it's the one I haven't watched yet, but I am going to watch it, but I haven't got a chance to.
It is well worth it, Nick.
Yeah. All I'll say is I talked to my dad today and said, what was his impression of it? And his response was when he saw Richmond come out, he just thought they looked too cocky and he thought they were going to lose.
Your dad's not blind. They're a very arrogant team, and they're an entitled mob. They think they're entitled to everything as well. Hence those 50-metre penalties, which they screamed their guts out, but, they gave them away. From my point of view, it was a good game, Fiend. I was wondering what was going on when Lachie Neale has not touched the ball at quarter time, and that's an absolute rarity. I can't believe he's ever played a game where he hasn't touched the ball in the first quarter. But he went on to have 3 good quarters after that, to his credit, which shows that the quality of the guy. Once when you start with a shitter, it's as a player, I know it's very hard to get back into the game, but he's a very good player. And look, they were a very even team. Charlie Cameron did some magic stuff up forward. I thought it was a very even team effort from Brisbane. Young blokes like Berry, McCluskey, and there's a couple of other young blokes really stepped up. Rayner had quite a good one. And from the Richmond point of view, they really could have done with a Brad Crouch in the middle, and perhaps that might make them a little bit keener to go after somebody like Brad.
Well, I thought that Richmond actually played like a team that felt that they were going to win. They felt like, I feel like they felt that they were on top of their game. They certainly brought finals intensity, and I just had the impression with Richmond that they felt like if they did the things that they needed to do, that they would win. And I think it was unexpected for them that Brisbane were able to not only withstand the pressure that Richmond brought, but also to match it and ultimately overcome it. And to me, it showed Richmond as a bit of a one-trick pony, to be honest, because I think for so long they've relied on their ability to crack teams by just applying relentless frontal pressure. and just being able to, jam the ball forward and get it forward at all costs and run ahead of the ball and all that sort of stuff. And I don't think I've seen too many teams actually match Richmond for intensity over 4 quarters the way Brisbane did.
I think that's a very excellent summary of what happened, mate. Well done. That really describes it very accurately. And they were very arrogant. I think they believed that, as you said, if they did that, it would just fall in their lap, and it just didn't work out that way because Brisbane matched them. And as you say, eventually wore them down and got on top.
Yeah, and I'm not even sure whether it was arrogance, Macca. I think they've just become so accustomed to winning games using that approach that it's quite unexpected for them. Like, generally speaking, you would think that Richmond, in their post matches in games that they've lost, their first thing would be, well, we didn't bring intensity, or we didn't play our way. But they played perfectly. They played their style 100%, and yet they came up against a team that, and to me, you could see it was a very interesting match because you could see Brisbane's belief increase the longer they were able to stay with Richmond. There were a couple of times where you felt like Richmond were going to crack the game open, and Brisbane just hung in there, and they kept their intensity up, and you could just see the belief rising in Brisbane. And I think we spoke last week about the fact that Richmond were looking very strong, and that Brisbane may have just be running out of steam, but after a game like that, and with a week's break just to regroup and to get over some tiredness and injuries, I think Brisbane are now a real threat, particularly with home ground advantage.
I think the last bit that you said is the big one, the home ground advantage. They don't travel, they live a normal life, and they've got their game going as well as they can get it going, and if they reproduce that every week, I'm not saying they will win it, but I'm saying they're giving themselves every chance to do so.
I agree. I think they're right back in the hunt. On Saturday, we had the early game, St Kilda 10-7-67, getting over the Bulldogs in a nail-biter, 9-10-64. The Bulldogs would consider that one that got away. Whilst you wouldn't have thought either team would have been pushing deep into the final series, fantastic not only for St Kilda but also for Brett Ratton to get that win under their belts.
The interesting thing is the 2 knockout finals were they were really desperately fought, and you can tell those knockout finals because both of them decided by less than a goal, and not really much between them, and a little bit of oscillation in the scoring, etc. So. I think in the end, the St Kilda Bulldogs game could have gone either way in the long run, and it just went St Kilda's way. I think Saints always just looked a little bit better, a little bit smoother. But the Bulldogs have that tenacity, and they always will keep trying, and they will keep coming at you. And if there's any weakness in you, they'll get you. But I think the Saints have recruited very well. The players they did recruit for the club were outstanding, and went very, very well. Ryder in particular was that I thought best player on the ground, and I saw him cry. I saw him crying after the game, and I thought until I saw the replay of it when he did his hamstring, I was thinking he was overcome by emotion. Yeah, but he's overcome by emotion, all right. Poor bastard. He's not going to play anymore this year.
Got a feel for him. They'd have to make a granny for him to have any chance, and the Saints were saying after the game...
I think they've already said he's out for the year.
He's out, because they said it was high.
Done for the year.
High
and the other thing too
is so quick.
The other negative for the Saints is the fact that, I can't remember his name, the lad that has been reported before for high hits has been suspended for 1 match as well for a high hit.
Yep.
Yeah, the thing that really impressed me the most about St Kilda, though, was when the Bulldogs were bringing that pressure. If you watching the game, you could see that the Saints kept their structure, and they kept that outlet players and everything else. So no matter how much pressure the Bulldogs were absolutely throwing at them, they always had an out in a way, and it was really impressive to see that from a team playing their first final in a very long time. And oh my God, and King is going to like seriously. Once they fix up those entries in, nobody's going to stop that kid. And he's got a really good football brain as well. He was doing some really nice stuff.
Your point about structure is a good one, Nick, and I think it's indicative of good coaching, but also a playing group that believes in what they're being taught and the structure that's been put in place. So kudos to Brett Ratten. We all know what he's gone through, and not only in footy terms, but also in his personal life. And I would have loved to have had him at the Adelaide Crows, and he's one person that I would never begrudge any success whatsoever. If the Saints were able to pull a Western Bulldogs of 2016, then I wouldn't mind that one little bit.
No, I'm not in the same camp as you, Fiend. I would have loved to have had him as our coach.
Yep.
I think the replacement of him with Malthouse was the destruction of Carlton. I mean, they just. I know it was Bolton first, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Or was it?
Yeah. No, it was Malthouse.
Malthouse first, and then Bolton. Yeah. I mean, they just self-destructed with their appointments, and they had a coach. They had a coach who would have got them places if they just kept on believing in him.
Yeah, and as I think they pointed out in the call that he's now actually won as many finals as Carlton has since they sacked him.
Exactly right. And typical bloody Carlton, and that's another reason why I don't begrudge Brett Ratten at all. Anyway, we'll move on. The last game, West Coast bowing out from 5th spot, bowing out against a team that I and many others had written off. Collingwood were rabbled the week before. And yet again, Mason Cox steps up in a final. You can say a lot of things about Mason Cox, but he's a performer. And Collingwood getting up 12-4-76 to the Eagles 11-9-75 in Perth, if you don't mind.
He's the opposite of Tom Hawkins.
Yes, I thought you told my line, Nicky. But I thought this was the highest quality game of the four. I thought that the actual football played between these two teams was the highest level. Some of the passages of playing it were quite outstanding, and Liam Ryan he created quite a few of them. He's just an outstanding player, that boy. Whether it's be on the ground, the air, or whatever he's doing, he's fantastic. And I really did. I enjoyed this game, and I had this horrible thing. I ended up feeling myself barracking for Collingwood, who I've never ever done in my life, and because I thought, against all the odds, I mean, they had to what they were in caravans or something like that for 2 weeks.
I don't know what they were doing.
It was a week that they had to be kind of kept in isolation. I actually wonder though whether that actually helped them, because they were spending. I mean, even though they'd been staying in the hubs and everything else, this was still even more keeping them in quite close. And because they had played so poorly, I think there probably were a lot of strong conversations possibly had. And I just really liked the way that they were playing and they kept at it. And West Coast's problem, particularly in that last quarter, was that they very much didn't play to the whistle. And they were complaining about the umpiring and
they lost concentration, Nick.
Yeah, completely. They expected it to happen for them. I mean, the crowd noise was fabulous, and it was mostly their way, but those frees were there, and they were rightly paid.
Now,
no about that.
Macca, can you turn your speakers down a little bit, because they're just feeding back into the mic?
I shall do that.
Now, this throws up a pretty interesting second week of the finals, 2 knockout finals. Probably not the games that we're expecting. And on the surface, you would think that the winners are pretty self-evident. Richmond playing St Kilda on the Friday night at Metricon, which is an interesting one. You would expect Richmond to bounce back against the Saints. But, the interesting thing about this game, to my mind, and you mentioned it earlier, Nicky, is that Western Bulldogs play a very similar style of game with a lack of talent that Richmond have. But they play a very similar style of game to Richmond, a hustle and bustle. And St Kilda, as you rightly pointed out, they were able to maintain structure in amongst all of that. It'll be very interesting to see how Richmond go against a well-organised team like St Kilda. St Kilda may not have the star power, but Richmond have a couple of players down. Jack Revolt is a worry for mine, and a couple of other players down. I just wonder if the Saints can get enough forward 50 entries, I think they might trouble Richmond.
Well, firstly, the reason they're playing at Metricon is that Richmond had the choice of ovals.
Well, that's why it's unusual, mate.
Well, they're undefeated at Metricon, and that's why they went there. Just a psychological thing. But there can't be any other logical reason. But I agree with you. The other thing, I thought Richmond's midfield didn't fire that well. I mean, Martin started off very, very well, and almost disappeared after about 1.5 quarters. And I thought their midfield let them down sadly, actually.
Well, Martin disappeared, coinciding with Lachie Neale starting to gain an influence.
Yes, but St Kilda's midfield is actually doing very, very well indeed. Yep. Hanbury had a very, very good game. Steele has been a steal. I wish we would have him in our side. He's bloody good.
Yeah. I wanted him in the draft.
Yep, he's a beauty. Their support boys, they're doing well as well. And I can see a situation, and as far as ruckman go too, Ryder's out, but Marshall's he's a very, very good ruckman.
Yeah, Marshall's decent, and they've got King up forward who can take a mark.
Yeah, I give them a chance. Logic says Richmond should win, but this is one of those situations where it might not be logical.
Nick, what do you reckon?
My only concern is that loss of Ryder. I think that is a big, big, big hole for the Saints to fill because of the way he plays, and he's not just at ruckman. He is quite strongly their link between their defense and their forward line. I think if he was fit, I would actually give the Saints a hell of a chance to push Richmond. But I think the loss of him is just, unfortunately, probably going to tip the balance more in Richmond's favour, annoyingly.
Yeah. It's an interesting one for St Kilda because it's essentially the same game with a step up in class. So it'll be a test for them to see whether they can maintain their game plan and their game style in a similar match, but against better opposition. So anyway, Geelong versus Collingwood. Well, all the pressure's on Geelong, isn't it? I mean, Collingwood weren't expected to be here. Geelong, a disappointing first round. It's interesting on the shorter Gabba ground with Mason Cox stepping up. If Collingwood get a bit more out of some of their other forwards, is still Sidebottom back? I think still Sidebottom's back too for them.
I'm not aware of that.
They're going to push the Cats, I think.
I think there's no doubt about that at all. When it comes to midfields, they've got a very, very good midfield, Collingwood, and it's functioning as well. The interesting thing is, that Brody Grundy only had 60-odd% game time, and I wonder whether he's playing injured because his form hasn't been that great.
No, he's dropped off.
But young Cameron went in there and for the rest of the time, and he did quite well.
Yeah.
Collingwood don't do it through stars so much, in the sense of they have a good midfield and their work rate was very high. And I really think that's what beat West Coast. It was just sheerly firstly their midfield, and plus the fact that they around the ground they just worked their arse off. Maynard and Crisp in the back lines are very, very good. And as you say, Big Cox, the Cox stood erect and marked a few, didn't he?
Come on, Mackie, you're better than that. Better than that. I thought, Macca, I thought Cox had the wood on his opponent all night. Really?
Well, yes, he did.
Come on. You just shafted me on that.
I'm sorry about that, mate.
You didn't get that one either.
I did.
If we're going to go for puns, we may as well go all out. Nikki, you got any?
No.
Well, Maddie in the chat said telling me to try harder.
I will just stay silent.
Well done, Maddie. Yeah, okay. But,
no, he really did stand tall all night, Cox. It was,
quite a few of them did. Yeah.
Anyway, enough of that.
Oh, children. Children.
We got Cox raised to the
Anyway, so I think I'm happy to go for Richmond on a Friday night, but this Saturday night one's a real toss-up for mine.
Yeah, I'm not aware of what
you
the
didn't get that one either.
No, I missed that one. Sorry, I thought you better have gone back to being serious. But no, what is their situation when they met during the home and away season? Do you know?
I can't remember, to be honest with you.
My guess is that Geelong probably would have won it, I would have thought.
Yeah, don't know. But, look, but it throws up an interesting scenario because you basically, sorry, Nick, go on.
Yeah, I was just going to say that I really actually think that Collingwood will win this one. I think there's a bit more belief, and particularly the way that they won against West Coast, and watching Geelong, and if you put that pressure at them, which is what Collingwood did to West Coast, and I think there's some scars in Geelong, and I think they're going to get a bit deeper.
Travel. I know both of them both teams have got the extra day. Geelong had to travel from Adelaide. Collingwood had to travel from Perth. Any impact with regards to recovery?
I wouldn't have thought so. These boys have been playing games during the year 4 and 5 days apart, and they had the week off. So from my point of view, no, I think they should be right as rain.
Yep. Don't disagree with that at all, mate. All right. Well,
I do find it hard to make a selection though, because can Collingwood repeat that effort? Because they haven't done it all year, and they've pulled out an odd one here and there during the year, and they did pull out their best for the year against West Coast, in my opinion. And maybe they're peaking, and maybe they will do it again. But they would have to play to that level again, in my opinion, to beat Geelong.
Look, I think this game's all about Geelong. I really do. I think it's all about how Geelong... Like, for example, I thought Chris Scott coached really badly. I understand that Paddy Dangerfield is a weapon up forward, but when the chips were down and they were getting touched up in the midfield at times, Geelong in that second half, Dangerfield needed to be in the guts, and the simple fact is that they did not trust the rest of their forwards to be able to get on the end of some centre clearances. And I'm sure Chris Scott would love to have two Dangerfields, but so would everyone else. And the fact is, he doesn't. And Patrick Dangerfield is a midfielder. You see him break away in that goal that they got in the last quarter, where he was 2-on-1, and he just absolutely broke away from those two Port players. And this is at the end of the game, mind you, when everyone's buggered, and he broke away and kicked that ball in there. That's what they needed in the midfield. They needed some of his tenacity, some of his burst speed, some of his pace, some of his will in that middle to break the game open and to get the ball or get the game being played in Geelong's half of the ground. And the simple fact is that for the amount of time that Paddy was down in the forward line, he hardly saw the ball. He was a wasted resource. I thought that was terribly bad coaching.
100% right. 100% right.
Not the first time he's done it as well in finals, that he's left Dangerfield up forward when they've gotten in trouble. He's done it before.
Yep.
And that just proves to me he's going to keep doing it. He doesn't understand. I actually don't rate him that much as a coach. I think half of Geelong is them coaching themselves, still on how Bomber Thompson used to coach them.
Oh, I actually agree with you, Nicky. I've always thought that this guy really is lucky to be still coaching, because he inherited a premiership team and he got a premiership in his first year, and he's gradually going backwards since then, and he'll take this team into retirement sort of situation without winning another flag. And that's my opinion, anyhow. And I totally agree with Fiend. Yeah, and I totally agree with Fiend about the use of Dangerfield, because it stuck out me like dog's balls. It really did, because and I think that was also the Hawkins factor flowed on into that third quarter, that Hawkins had let them down so badly in the first half that Scott, in his limited way of coaching, thought, oops, I better put Dangerfield down there to try and get some goals, because Hawkins isn't getting them. But what that did was absolutely remove him from the midfield, and it removed his... and he is a very dynamic player, and he is an inspirational player with his efforts. And as you said, he was down the forward line there allegedly to help Hawkins get some goals or get them himself, but the ball didn't come down there then. So it was just bad coaching, really bad coaching.
Yeah. I 100% agree with you about Chris Scott. I don't think he'll coach Geelong to a flag, and if they go out in straight sets, or even if they fall down at another prelim, given that they're looking at a bit of a soft rebuild themselves, that club, after this year, I think Chris Scott will be under pressure. I really do. It's been a while. He got his first flag with them, basically inherited from Bomber Thompson, in my view.
Correct. Yep.
And I agree. I don't think he's a great coach. I think that team has coached itself for a long time. They've relied on star power. And star power is not going to get it done in a final. You'll win some games during the season based on star power, but when it comes to finals, if you're coming up against a committed opponent, and Port Adelaide are exactly that, a workmanlike team that are clearly playing for each other and clearly 100% bought in, and have a bit of youth and a bit of pace and belief to run at Geelong, your star power's not going to do it. It's your bottom 8 players that are going to win you a game like that in finals, and that's where Geelong is very thin.
The other thing too, Fane, is it also showed to me that the little master, as they like to call him, is no longer the little master. He's just a little bald-headed guy running around and not quite good enough these days, in my opinion.
He'd have to be...
It's Groundhog Day here, because I was about to raise the fact that you got nothing out of Ablett. Yeah. He was a liability.
He wasn't.
Why are we agreeing with each other?
It's something gone... Well, we've both got something wrong in our brains, Nicky.
Well, there you go.
But in all seriousness, if you were honest, you wouldn't pick him for the preliminary final. Oh, sorry, not for the next final, because if you pick players on whether they deserve to be picked, you would not pick him. I thought he was very, very ordinary. He's been very, very ordinary leading up to the finals. And if his name was anything but Ablett, he wouldn't be playing.
Yep, agreed.
And I agree with you, Fane, it has to be his last year.
Yeah, agree. All right, let's move on to the reason we do this podcast, and this is the Adelaide Crows, because we've given the finals far too much time. 27 minutes, guys. 27 minutes. 33 minutes, actually. Sorry about that, listeners.
Sorry.
But we'll get onto it now. And it's been a fortnight, and during that fortnight, a fair bit's happened. And let's start at the beginning, shall we? Delistings so far. Delistings. So far, we've had confirmed that Riley Knight, Patrick Wilson and Ace Taylor have been delisted. That's along with Rory Atkins informing the club that he's going to explore opportunities. No rules. And, of course, Bryce Gibbs, who I was going to talk about in a little minute, but he's also buggered off. So the delisting so far, there's a couple... I think what the delistings show, I'm not so surprised about the names. I think what they show at the moment is that we don't have any certainty around list size for next season, because there's a few interesting scenarios still to play out with some other players. But dealing with these three boys, I mean, I don't think many people have seen much of Ace, so it's very unfortunate for him. The timing couldn't have been worse. He was a speculative pickup anyway.
Yeah, he was the late kind of one. He was a cover for just in case, and then he got a hamstring injury, which was quite bad.
Well, on the back of COVID and not really being able to play in Sample.
So he couldn't play at all. But, well, his hamstring was so bad that they actually did say he was out for the year pretty much.
Yeah. Paddy Wilson, not quite sure why he was retained on the list in the first place.
I agree.
For this season. And that's not a knock on Paddy. They just never wanted to play him for the reason that they picked him up in the first place. So I hope Patrick goes back to Sturt and joins back up with Marty Matner and wins another flag, to be honest. Because I think he's a fantastic midfielder in the SANFL. I think he had some value as an inside midfielder at AFL level, but of course, we never played him there. We played him in the graveyard spot, and I'm sure Patrick benefited from being on the AFL, on the Adelaide Crows list, and he probably made a bit of coin, and that's all well and good. But geez, what a waste, really, for Patrick Wilson.
Well, it is a waste of some years for him.
Yeah, and Riley Knight. I don't think anyone else would pick him up as a DFA. I'd be surprised if they do, particularly if lists get cut a little bit. A bit of a wasted career, I reckon, Riley Knight.
Absolutely. Unfortunately for him, though, he's one of these people. He was a brave player, always went in hard, and he also did get him more than his share of injuries. And if you don't get continuity in this game, it's very easy to drop off the favoured list, and that's exactly what's happened with Riley. And then you get an odd game here and there, and of course that doesn't give you the opportunity to show your best. So I think Riley Knight was quite a good footballer, but unfortunately, again, the stars didn't align for him properly, and I think quite rightfully he's been delisted as well.
He had a lot of opportunities to go that step further, and he just couldn't take it. He was always that. What is it? He was that 14 to 20 possession player. When he got those little cameos on song, that Bulldogs final, he did some great things in there. He was probably one of the best players to ever get under the skin of Selwood. And he would, hold him back. But we're not going to play every game against Geelong. So he had to get more tricks and more, just that little step up. And it just seemed it was beyond Riley. I did like him as a player. He had some really nice skills and everything else, but he just couldn't take that extra step. I agree with you, Fiend. I think if the list sizes stay larger, or as they are now, then there might be an opportunity for him with another club, but if it gets cut down, I'd say it'd be a no.
I'd say they are going to get cut down, Nicky. The general opinion seems to be, and it has been really right for the word go, that the worst it's going to be is going to be 38 plus 2 rookies or...
Oh, where did Macca go?
He went bye-byes.
Yeah, but I think what he was saying is 38-2.
If there's no rookies.
Yeah.
Oh, there you go. You're back. Macca, you're just dropping in and out at the moment for some reason. Maybe you've got a loose cord.
Well, I've got it in as tight as I can, mate.
Well, that's what Mason Cox said.
But no, what I was saying was that 38 and 2 or 40 is probably what's going to be the case. We've removed 5, so that puts us in the position where we now have to further delist the number of draft picks we are going to take. Yep. And I think that'll be another 6, Fiend.
Yeah,
but I think
so.
There'll be trades involved, so I think there might be some further delistings depending on if we get a bite regarding certain players to trade them instead. So
3 down plus Bryce makes 4. Rory comes out, makes 5. So that takes us. What were we 44, weren't we? I think from memory.
45.
Yeah. So so down to. I think there'll be another 3, Mac. I think we'll end up with it. I think we'll end up with a list size of 40 and 2. That's what I think.
Well, Well, that would be much better in my opinion, because I think 5 is very drastic, and it may affect the draft very badly. So I know that all the clubs are preparing on the basis of it being 38 and 2 or 40 in total, but hoping for it to be better than that. So they're saying 40 is the worst case, but it could well be 42 or 43.
I reckon 40 and 2, and I reckon the reason will be the AFLPA. But anyway, it's speculation.
But I still, in my opinion, I think we'll probably be taking at least 5 draft picks and holding one back for the pre-season draft. So, to me, that's 6 players would have to go still.
Yeah.
If it was going to be 40.
Yeah. Other news, just going back one step, congratulations to Lockie Scholl, who got a belated Rising Star. Thank God he backed up against Richmond, because he bloody deserved it the week before. But he got the Rising Star nom for his match against Richmond, so that was well deserved. And really, out of all our youngsters, Will Hamill's injury notwithstanding, he probably was the one that was probably the most effective in the end, Lockie Scholl.
Lockie Scholl, right from the word go, he looked like he was comfortable at that level and at home at that level, and his disposal is absolutely beautiful. It's a joy to watch a player actually hit a teammate for a change.
Yep.
And I thought McPherson, you've got to give him kudos as well. He looked absolutely at home, as if he'd been playing there for all of his life. And I think young Hamill, he showed us what happens if you actually mark the ball and then play on quickly and have the ability to kick it to a teammate. So it was really a pity about that second concussion, which kept him out of action, because he was just starting to. He was actually building at that time, and I think that if he hadn't have had that concussion, he would have ended up having a very good end of year.
He'll be right.
Yeah, quite simply, the AFL needs to actually admit that the Rising Star nominations are not for that round. It's actually for a body of work, because that's what proved it. But also, I think this is a nice segue into the Club Champion Award.
No, it's not, Nikki. No, it's not, Nikki, because I'm not there yet. Not? You're not running the show. I am. So stick with the bloody conversation. Well, I knew you were going to go there.
I was. Well, because Macca raised McPherson, and I think that as much as I love Scholl, and you know how much I love Scholl, and I rate him, and I think he's going to be an absolute superstar. What McPherson has done this year, he even more than Scholl came in and just from the very, very start looked like a 50-game player.
Yeah, it's a fair call. Macca, you'll just need to move your mic a little bit away. Still feeding back in there a little bit. The other, I just want to go in date order if I can, Nikki, which is why I stopped you, because the other thing that occurred, because we've got so much to go through, the other thing that occurred not long after the Richmond game was the coaching shuffle. So we had Mick Godden drop off. He was informed that he wasn't going to be offered another contract, so he's off. Benny Hart, obviously, was also let go. So that was 2 that came off. And since then, not in chronological order, we've obviously had the announcement that Scotty Burns is joining the ranks after 2 cracks at our head coaching job. Interesting appointment. Discuss.
Well, it's about Scotty Burns.
The coaching situation.
Oh, the coaching situation. Well, we had the worst lot of coaches that anybody had. The 2 that we had that have gone. Well, I don't think anybody's going to lose tears about that. And it was Brent Riley, wasn't it, that he filled in once Marty Mattner went.
Yep.
And he'll go back to his development role, so he'll still be with the club. But he's a good guy, and I think he didn't do a bad job when he was filling in. But what we seem to be doing now is the 3 coaches that 2 have been named, and the third one is pretty well named. We
Who's the third one, Mac?
Rahili from Geelong.
No, I don't think he's going to be. Is he going to be in the coaching squad, or is he going to be head of development?
No, well, I understood he was going to be forward coach, but
okay.
So you've got somebody from Geelong, somebody from West Coast, and somebody from Hawthorn. So we're taking coaches that are actually active at the moment and are with clubs that have had success and know what success is all about. So
you could argue that none of those blokes had been there during that successful period, but anyway, go on.
Well,
if you want to be really cynical about it.
Well, Scotty Burns has been around a bit. And
but never in a successful team.
Well,
he's come in after they were successful.
Yep.
Well, yes, but I still think Scotty Burns. Twice he's applied for the senior position, and twice he. Yep. In fact, the very first time he was actually going to get it, I think, and I think he got cold feet at the last minute for the first time. So I think Scotty Burns is a very good get as a senior coach and alongside Nixie. The second one, which is VB, and we know VB's a highly intelligent man, and if he's good enough for West Coast midfield, he's good enough for our midfield. That's for certain, and I think he'll bring a lot to the midfield, and also he's a guy of great integrity and intelligence, and Rahili, well, he will just tell people to kick straight instead of missing like Hawkins does.
No, he actually comes with some big raps, really.
Yeah, he does.
I was being facetious.
Yeah, no, the least known of the three, certainly from the Adelaide Crows supporters' perspective, but the raps on him are quite good. I was being facetious about Burns. I think he'll be an excellent foil for Matty Nix. Similar generation, both been around the traps. Well, Scotty Burns has been around the traps for ages. Captain a premiership side in Collingwood back in whenever it was.
Yep.
So a lot of grit with Scott Burns and a lot of football IQ. I think VB will just be certainly one to drive high standards on the track as well as preparation, etc. Riley is a very player-oriented sort of a bloke, builds good relationships, has a very good understanding of connecting midfield and forward setup. So, I think it's excellent. I want to raise this point because we've had a couple of other appointments. We've also had more recently, we've had an interesting appointment that's really gone under the radar a bit. But we've had Tom Hurley named as Football Operations Manager. Now, Tom Hurley was ex-SANFL, used to play for Sturt a while back. Will report to Adam Kelly. So we've just snuck another position in that whole chain of command, if you ask me. I don't think we've ever had a football operations manager and a head of football reporting to a director of football. Well, can you?
I didn't even know that. I didn't even know that had happened. When did that happen?
Happened during the week, and like I said, it flew under the radar. There's not a post on Big Footy about it. There's been no media about it whatsoever.
Where did you read it?
Adelaide Crows website. Former SANFL head of community Tom Hurley. It's up for people. Has been named football operations manager of the Adelaide Football Club. Hurley, who played for Sturt and once captained the SA under-18s, joins the club with more than 5 years of experience at SANFL level, or at the SANFL, I should say. He'll report to the head of football, Adam Kelly, and manage a variety of responsibilities, including administration and matchday operations. A bit of a Phil Harper role, by the sounds of it.
For the men's team.
Yeah, it's always been an aspiration to get into the AFL system, particularly with the Adelaide Crows, which is a really strong club, and one that is heading in a positive direction. So so far we've made 2 confirmed football coaching appointments, plus the appointment of another administration person in Tom. Mooted to be appointing a third coach when Geelong bow out.
Mm-hmm.
Now, we're also hearing whispers about certain people being put forward for Chapman's role. Now, remember this time last year, or it might have been a little bit earlier, there was a little bit of a rumbling amongst social media, and there was a little petition that gained over 1,000 signatures, and there were a lot of emails to the club. And
a little one. Yeah.
Remember how our director of football said that we should have faith in the club, and if we didn't like it, we should go support somewhere else. And do you remember that we had the best football department in the universe? And remember how there were ongoing reviews, and that Robbie Chapman came out and said everyone was outstanding, etc. And Andrew Fagan told us that everyone works particularly hard and all the rest of it. 12 months later, we have had almost a complete dismantling of the administration and the coaching staff. 12 months later. I'm calling this the fan revolution, because without our podcast, other podcasts like the Crowjack, Two Crows, the Crow's Nest, and those blokes, rumblings on Facebook, rumblings on Big Footy, people getting pissed off. Without the fans driving this, none of these changes would have occurred. Discuss.
Well, he bugger you, Sam, because I was going to say Great Rage exactly the same thing.
Oh, sorry, mate.
100% that this revolution, and it is a revolution, because for all the reasons you outlined with what Rue was saying, what Chapman was saying, what Fagan was saying, etc., we had it all. These were the greatest people alive. Leave them alone.
We just had to back them in, have faith in the club.
Yeah. In fact, Burton was going to become elite, for fuck's sake.
Burton was actually going to be run for Prime Minister, I think.
Well, I mean, geez, that was so bad. And if it had not been for the fact that, in fact, Rue triggered it by getting the fans upset.
Yeah, that was the last straw, wasn't it? That was the last straw.
Yes, and then
very much so. And
then it was shows like this, and I think not just us, but all over the country, that anybody that associated with the Adelaide Football Club said, "Get rid of these bastards, get rid of them." Yep. And of course, then they had the review, and it turned out they were a mob of turds. They really were a mob of turds. And they had to go.
Yep.
And
the Rue was...
one that
Sorry, go on.
Sorry. I'm going to say there's another potential appointment that you haven't mentioned, is the fact that Saunders is gone, and we're trying to get hold of Burgess for our fitness coach.
Very interesting one, that one, because we brought Saunders in because we completely mismanaged Kangatech, and Saunders is the co-founder of Kangatech and developed the technology initially at North Melbourne, but is an Adelaide physiotherapist of some note prior to that. And the knowledge that I have about Kangatech was that there's nothing wrong with the technology itself, but there's some misunderstanding about Kangatech. It's merely a data gathering technology, and what we mismanaged, and the reason for our burgeoning soft tissues through 2018 was purely because of the way in which the data was being managed and handled and collated and read and interpreted, basically. And that's on Burton and Haas. And they were actually using spreadsheets that were developed by Nick Poulos for a completely different purpose. And as a consequence, I know for a fact that the club employed or engaged a company to develop an interface for Kangatech that was more accurate and gave more pertinent information to staff. And in the end, it was decided that they needed to actually get the inventor of the bloody thing to come in and fix it up. Now, our soft tissues in a very challenging year were significantly less this year than they have been previously, despite short breaks and all the rest of travel, etc. But my feeling is, with Saunders being quietly shuffled out the door, there's not a lot of fanfare about that one either. I think he's either normalised Kangatech so that the interface is now solid and anyone can use it, or we've decided that Kangatech is no longer something that we want to be using. It'll be interesting to see if anyone from the club says anything about that. And I might actually shoot off a email to the club just asking for some clarification, because Saunders was definitely brought in to steady that part of the thing and manage a few key individuals like Brad Crouch with his groins, etc.
He was only part-time.
He was only part-time, but he was given a title. He was given a title.
Yeah.
He was part of that chain, and certainly there to manage a few key individuals. And I think
he still wasn't cheap, even though he was part time.
Oh God, no! Because he's a highly respected individual in those circles. So you're right. Burgess from Melbourne has been ushered out, probably because of COVID, I would imagine, and the Crows are all over him at the moment. So he would be a good get. He did some good stuff at Port, and it would be a good get. And you would think, Mackie, that if he comes across, then Haas might be shown the door quietly as well.
Bloody well hope so, yeah. But coming back to the point you originally raised, it is people power. This is this whole situation, and it gives me a lot of satisfaction to be a minute part of it, yourself greater part of it by having the show, and the other shows that, as you mentioned, quite rightly so, the podcast, and in general, the people that rang up 5AA and were really pissed off, and time to get rid of Buddy Rua, etc., etc. And it just goes to show that there is, if people are united, they can actually upset even something as cemented on and glued on as the Adelaide Football Club was.
Yeah, look, Matt, and that's my point. Go on, Nick.
I'd say primarily, though, the greatest force was people bringing up and cancelling their memberships. Money talks.
That will do
Purely
it.
and simply money talks, particularly with our club.
I don't want to overstate our involvement in that whole disaster, but there's a difference between people jumping up and down and having a whinge, and like you said, Macca, people becoming a bit of a united force. And I don't think that the level of disenchantment with the club would have been felt by the club sufficiently had all the disenchantment not been pulled together into almost a pseudo movement, if you like, and directed at the club. There was lots of grumbling on social media, on Facebook and Twitter and whatnot, and all the rest of it. But it was the ability of our podcasts, other podcasts, radio like 5AA, as you said, all directed straight at the club, to the point where the club just could not ignore it any longer. They could not ignore it. And what I would say to people on that point is that as much as the Adelaide Crows is a franchise, and a lot of people would not like me saying that, but it's a franchise. As much as the Adelaide Crows has a constitution at the moment that doesn't allow for any member control. We only have 2 member-elected representatives on the board, and the board and the chair are elected from within with AFL ratification. So despite all of that, and despite the Adelaide Crows having become quite a corporate entity and quite comfortable with itself in many respects, despite all of that, it's still our bloody club. And if enough people make themselves known and are clear and concise about what their problem is with the club, then the club, despite all of those things working against fans, the club still has to listen. And this change with this football club is as a result of people. Nothing else. It's not any good decisions. Good decisions have been made by the club as a result of being forced to make them. And that's on people that listen to these casts, people that are passionate, buy their season tickets every year, go along, support the club through thick and thin. So I congratulate everyone that mobilised, whether they signed our petition, whether they called AA, whether they wrote to the advertiser, whether they emailed the club, whatever they chose to do, the fact that they chose to do it is the very reason that the Adelaide club is looking far more positive now than it was 12 months ago.
Exactly. It was a closed shop rabble, and now it's much more of an open book, and with much greater quality people in it. And I'll be glad when Chappie's gone, and that idiot Jim Hazel, who's the deputy one, who unfortunately is having a say in who the replacement is, because
talking about bloody John Olsen at the moment, that'd be a step back.
Well, yeah, and that's exactly what an idiot like Jim Hazel would come up with, because I know the guy, I've worked with him, and anyhow, so I better shut up, and I'll get myself into trouble.
Now, mate. Too late.
Well, I'd put it this way: I don't trust his judgment. I can get away with saying that, and I really hope that Chapman is thinking about what the club would want, not necessarily what he and Jim Hazel would want. So, in other words, not what they personally would like, but what they really think is best for the club.
The only thing I would say to that, Macca, is that before Phil's passing, half the people wouldn't have been able to name Adelaide Crow's chairman, because Chappie was just a professional board sitter, right? And the tragedy with Phil forced Chapman to come out into the public eye, and credit where it's due, he handled that situation very, very well, because that's one of his strengths. However, he was
did them.
What occurred after that was the problem, because having been put into the public eye, he, along with Rue and Fags, had far too much say over the football operations of the club. And the appointment of Brett Burton was the pinnacle of, or the epitome of that they had far too much say. So, and we all know that, and that appears to have been rectified somewhat now. And I think probably one of the silent results of the review that Jason Dunstall and Pav and the other bloke, whoever it was, I can't remember, did, was this separation of corporate entity and football club. And I think that the key element of that is this appointment of Tom Hurley, and this is why I brought it up, this appointment of Tom Hurley between Adam Kelly and the coaching staff. Because to me, that extra head in the footy admin or footy ops space, to me, kind of illustrates a separation of duties, if you like, a separation of footy operations and club operations. And if that's the case, I couldn't give a rat's ass who was appointed chairman of the Adelaide Football Club, because I don't think they're going to have the same leverage and the same level of power as what Chapman did in the last 3 or 4 years.
You mean, or interference is another way of putting it?
Yes. That's my take on it. Adam Kelly is a very strong person.
I don't raise him and say, I think he's actually, we've seen him on TV several times recently. We saw that dickhead Burton probably once or twice, and he stuffed up every time he was on there. So Adam Kelly is a vast improvement on Burton, and I think he will grow into a very good person in that role.
I agree. I like what he said with Braden Tyson's indiscretion. He was up front, and that's another thing. The rhetoric from the club in these situations has been very upfront. It hasn't been flowery or anything like that. It's just been very straightforward, short, sharp, to the point. But I think what we're seeing is a transition to a structure that allows footy operations to go ahead with whatever budget they're allocated and go and win a flag. And Andrew Fagan and the board and Smarty and whoever else, they can run the club and generate profits, etc., which is what they're good at, and leave the footy ops to what Adam Kelly and the like are good at. And I like it. That's the way the club should be organised, in my opinion.
Correct. Now, you mentioned that about Brad, and you mentioned about Stengel.
Yes. Let's have a look at that.
Not in date order.
All right, let's go back. All right. Before anything else, we need to say congratulations to Wayne Miller. We need to say congratulations to Luke Brown, and we need to say congratulations to Tex Walker and their partners, who have all announced imminent baby news. So congratulations to those three families, and we wish them all the very best during the off season. Those. What else have we got? All right, let's go through the club champion night, which didn't really throw up too many surprises, or maybe one surprise, I think. So Riley O'Brien deservedly got both the Crows Club Champion Award and the Members MVP. I don't think anyone would argue with him being deserving of those awards.
No, 100% winner.
No argument.
We had Tex Walker obviously topping the goal kicking. Did he make double figures, Tex?
No.
He did.
He did. Andy McPherson claimed the Emerging Talent Award, which I thought was very well deserved and underpins what you said earlier, Mac, about, or was it you, Nick? I can't. Nicky.
Me.
I did originally, and Nicky then jumped on the bandwagon as usual.
Yeah, well, much deserved. Tommy Lynch was an interesting one. Best team man. I thought Tom's season was very much a mixed bag, and I found his award a little surprising.
My question would be: is that voted by the players?
The players.
Well, if that's voted by the players, then it's understandable, which means that the guy communicates very well with players at both upper, middle, and bottom levels in the club.
Yeah, there's no doubt that he's
and
well loved amongst his peers. Him and Brody would have been the two contenders for that.
It's more to do with whilst he was out, that background work he was actually doing with a lot of the younger players, and particularly our forward line players, and those ones. And that's what that award is actually all about.
Yeah,
it's it shows you this about what he does behind the scenes that people don't see.
Yeah, and I think we all recognise that from Tommy. A good fella and a good glue amongst the playing group, I would have thought. So, yeah, in retrospect, probably well deserved. Benny Keys wins the Players' Trademark Award. I don't actually know what that is, but I assume it's because he played it right.
Well, if it means he plays like a tradie, yep, no problems. Actually, his work rate was fantastic for the year, and he was a very good get, Ben, and I'm glad he got an award.
Well, and it's his contract situation that led me to say earlier, Mac, that we don't have finality about the list sizes because he's still sitting uncontracted. There's no way that he doesn't play for the Crows next season, but I think his contract status hinges very much on what the final outcome of those discussions around list sizes is for 2021.
Yeah, but he wouldn't stay as a rookie, even if they do have two rookies. I mean, he would definitely go onto the senior list.
Well, it depends. See, he might have to. They can keep him on for 2 years as a rookie. My understanding.
No, it depends when he signed. If he signed for 2 years. I thought my understanding was he had signed for one.
I'm not sure about that. Anyway, but yeah, I mean, it seems a little bit odd that he's still in contract discussions, and to me it just seems that maybe that's because of the uncertainty, because we do still have a few out of contract players. There's Kieran Strawn, who's out of contract. There's who else have we got? Let's just have a look here. At Footy Wire, out of contract, Benny Crocker, D-Mac, Galooch, Hardigan, Paholke. There's a few yet.
Well,
you'd think that Miles is gone.
Paholke will go. But I've heard Adam Kelly talking about that, and he basically said that until they know the list sizes they won't be delisting any more players.
Yeah, well, and that's what I guess what I was getting at. That there's no way that they can, is there? They just can't.
No.
So
Because actually, all the players you mentioned there, you could probably pick some that, yes, they're the ones that are going to go. But just say, for example, they maintain the full 45, well, then some of those players that would be going would probably stay.
yeah. Well, given what's happening with Bradley Crouch, and there's whispers of strong interest from Geelong, maybe St Kilda, and possibly one other.
Richmond.
Yep. Don't know whether he fits into Richmond, but anyway. Look. All right. Let's quickly talk about his situation with Stengel. Personally, I don't think it'll impact on contract negotiations at all for Brad Crouch.
No, my
Because
first
it'd be the most
reaction was
hypocritical thing.
Yeah, because half their teams, whichever team he goes to, half their team would be on it right this minute. But when I first heard it, I really thought he has really stuffed this up in lumps. And as somebody said, it's like getting $100 notes and filling them in a barrel and setting fire to them. But and my original reaction was that. But he'll get a strike from the AFL. If I was the Adelaide Football Club, I'd give him money a $5,000 fine because he didn't actually take the stuff. He had the stuff, but the offence, it's not, and there's no police offence involved in it at all. So that's what I would do to make sure that kept his tradability right up there. And and I think from the point of view, the clubs that are interested in Geelong and Richmond, I know, are two that are very interested in him. And I would have thought that them losing their finals is an asset, actually, in terms of increasing their interest in Brad. And I think that, I still think there's at least probably somewhere between a 50 and 75% chance that we'll get picked too.
I think he ends up at Geelong. I reckon he's a Selwood replacement in the longer
Correct.
term.
I think that's the most likely.
Yep, and I think they'll pay him enough to give us band 2, I think.
And the other thing too is I'm sure that sensibly they'll tell Ablett to retire, and that gives them a lot more money too to play around with.
Well, they got Harry Taylor coming off the books, and another guy that Lockie Henderson coming off the books. Yep. Gablett may retire as well. The big reason why I think they'll give Brad enough to give us band 2 is simply this: that if they get Brad via free agency, then it's a free hit for them, only costs them salary. Whereas if they don't, if they only offer him enough that we can match, then we force a trade, and it's going to cost them more. And correct. I don't think Geelong are in a position to trade at the moment. They've got, I think they've got 3 inside top 20, but they're all in the teens, I think. And they wouldn't want to let any of those picks go at the moment, given the state of their list. So I think that they would happily pay Brad overs to make sure that they don't have to give anything up for him.
No, you're on the money, and the fact that you don't have to give away picks for him is definitely the key. Port Adelaide, and it tells me that Wines is probably going to go back to Melbourne. They offered Brad 4 by $6.50. Do you
know that for a fact?
Because, yes, I do.
Right.
That was prior to the offence. I don't know whether it's still on the table or not.
Yeah.
But that was there. That was given to him. 4 by $6.50. And that said to me that Wines is going, and he's the replacement for Wines.
I think Wines will end up at Carlton.
Yes, every chance. And so I don't rule out our neighbours are still coming into the picture apart from Geelong.
The issue will be that if I think Brad's number one option would. I think Brad has already come out and ruled out playing for Port Adelaide publicly.
No, he has not.
Yes,
No,
he
he
has.
has not.
Yes, he has.
He said he'd like to stay. He said he'd like to stay in Adelaide.
That was a while back, but he is, as recently I think as last week, categorically ruled out playing for Port.
Well, the advantage to Port in it that would be is that they don't have a first round pick. They traded it away last year. Now, if they did get Brad, they get him with no picks involved. If they move on Wines, they'll get at least a first round pick and maybe a first and a second for Wines. So that's why it would be a very good deal for Port Adelaide.
What do you reckon there? Go on, Nick.
Well, little birdie told me about somebody who frequents the same place that he frequents, and his comments are not quite. Brad actually doesn't care where he goes; he just wants the money.
Yep.
Well,
I think you are right, Nikki.
Well, I mean
that doesn't surprise me.
That doesn't surprise me, given that he was exploring the Suns last year. The simple fact is, I wouldn't mind betting that Port are putting a deal on the table just to force us to match, so that we keep him. He'll end up at Geelong. Nothing surer. He'll end up at Geelong. I don't think Port will take him, and I don't think Richmond are serious suitors and would struggle with cap space.
And it's also a very Geelong thing to do.
Yeah. So I think it's Geelong. And I think it'll be for Band 2, for the reasons I mentioned earlier. Moving on from that, though, what do we think of Tyson Stengel now? There's 2 indiscretions. I'm going to be controversial here, but I'm not one of these people that gets hysterical because he had a little bit of bloody stuff in a bag. I think that his first indiscretion, driving unregistered, unlicensed and drunk, was by far the more serious indiscretion.
10 times worse.
So all these people that get on the bandwagon about drug use, he's not a drug abuser. None of them not many of them are drug abusers. They all get on the gear after footy season's finished. You're an idiot if you don't. You're an idiot if you think that 50% of your kids don't. It's not as bad as all the rhetoric in the media would make it out to be. Nonetheless, he got caught stupidly, and there has been a few whispers about an 8-week suspension, club-imposed suspension.
Yeah, look, that's very dramatic, and I understand why the club would do that because of the fact that his first offence got him 4 games, and so the second one's got to be bigger and higher. But I'm in your court in the sense of the relativity of what he's actually done. The first one was a massive, in my opinion, it was a massive
could have killed some
act against the public and society, as you say, because he driving drunk like that, he could have killed somebody. He did have a crash, etc., etc. I think he was unlicensed, or the car was unregistered as well. So, I mean, there were a lot of police matters in that, and apart from that, a lot of moral factors of not giving a shit about the public in general. In this case, what he's done, the person that, not necessarily even going to damage him, but if there's any perverse thing, anyone that's going to be damaged, it's himself. But he's not going to hurt anybody else. So if we're realistic, if it's not a police offence, I don't know how we could rate it as highly as the first one. So from my point of view, I would probably, as I said, with Brad, I would give Brad a $5,000 fine and perhaps a little bit of community service, and I would give Stengel $5,000 fine, community service, and also suspend him for 4 games max.
Oh no, not 4. Not 4. No,
Too much?
I agree with everything else that you've said. I don't agree with giving him match suspensions. I really don't. He'll get an AFL sanction.
Yep.
I don't. Yeah. And we don't know what his strike position is, whether it's his first, second, or third strike. Who knows at this stage? Interestingly, the AFL illicit drug policy is not only for use but also possession. So he gets that strike even though he didn't test positive. So, no, look, I'd be giving him... I'd be saying to Tyson, look, if you want to regain the trust of the playing group, from a public perception point of view, I think community service would be what I'd be doing for Tyson. Not matches, because it just penalises the side.
It does. And I'm glad we had to go look down the path you're saying. And any talk about 8 is ridiculous. It's farcical.
Yeah.
And you also you don't want to crack the kid as well.
No, that's right. And look, in these circumstances, you've got to wrap your arms around these kids. He's obviously got a little bit of a behavioural problem, Tyson Stengel, probably easily led astray. You've got to consider Brad is a senior player that he was with. So you're right, Macca. You've got to be careful. It was like it's not a chargeable offence. The amount that he had was so small that it qualified for the referral to counselling with no conviction. So we're talking about minor personal use, which honestly, and I'll debate anyone until the cows come home, 1,000% less dangerous to the public and himself than a slab of beer, which is legal. So I wouldn't be giving him matches.
Yeah,
my only thing on it is, though, that the club would know best what's the way to punish him to actually get him to pull his head in. And because of, and I agree with both of you that first offence was way more severe than what this one is. And so if they are talking about those stronger type offences, to me, I kind of want to put my trust in the club that this is what they have to do for him. Because you're talking about throwing your arms around him. Maybe there have been other issues. They've done that. They've thrown their arms around him. And he's continuing to do this.
You're exactly right, Nikki. We don't know.
Yeah, that's why I kind of don't want to put too much out there, because we don't know enough about it and what's going on behind it. And in something like this, as much as a talent he is, and I really do rate what he brings to our team, if this is an issue, this is not the first time. And I think it's possibly more along the lines of possibly being easily led astray. But again, that's just an assumption with no knowledge.
He's a talented kid, and there's a reason why Richmond would have let him go. Talented kid. But we do have a culture guy now, and we're building a culture. And I'm with you, Nick. I think we need to just, let the club do their job. And I guess when we're talking about it, we can only talk about it on face value. And on face value, I'd be inclined not to give him match suspension. But if the leadership group and if the club decide that that's the most appropriate way to get him back on track, then so be it. We'll just have to wait and see on that one. All right, what else happened? Anything else happened? I reckon we've just about covered it.
I think we're just about done it. I can't think of anything.
An hour and a half.
Yep, I don't think there was anything else, considering Mac and I decided beforehand that we were going to go for an hour.
Well, this is
I quietly laughed.
But this is our version of an hour, though, Fane.
Yeah, that's right. Well, it's daylight savings. I'm putting it down to daylight savings.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
Yeah. Now, look, thanks to everyone who has joined us on Facebook and YouTube and even on Twitch. J-Mac, thank you. And thank you for those who joined along on Discord for the chat. We will be back again next Sunday for another edition of the Weekend Wrap. In the interim, or in the meantime, I should say. God, I'm tired. Thanks, Macca and Nikki, for coming along. It was a good chat tonight.
Yep.
Night
No,
all.
enjoyed it.
Oh, Nikki,
Good
well
night,
done.
all.
You didn't mess up my outro. See you later, guys. See you next week.